The increasing popularity of almond milk could mean that postage stamp storage becomes a little more costly.
So as more people are drinking this, it's going to cost more to keep these somewhere?
Yes, so as almond milk popularity rises and more people drink almond milk, you might see storing postage stamps like these become a little bit more expensive.
All right.
Okay, let's get to it. Welcome to The Knock-On Effect. This is where we begin with the thing you know and end up in a strange place.
We certainly do.
This week is a very strange place that we're going. I'm Justine Underhill, and joining us today we have our cream of the crop guesser, Alex Rosenberg.
Thank you.
And we also have our bread and butter professor joining us from an undisclosed location, Roger Hurst.
Hello again, everyone.
And it seems, Roger, you're out on the farm today.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we had to be appropriately dressed in the right attire. And so, yes, I'll be looking after the herds later on.
All the crops and everything. Okay, well, I'm glad you're keeping tabs on that. And for our final segment, we are going to the land of crypto, where our colleague,
Yes.
Ash Bennington, will give us his take on what's actually going on.
Yeah, we'll find out if this whole corporate blockchain thing is BS or
Or
something.
for real.
Yeah.
Which it possibly is. Okay. All right, well, let's get to our main story.
Oh, so excited.
Okay, do you want to try taking a guess as to why increasing popularity of almond milk means that we're going to see more costly stamp storage?
So you know what? I know that almonds, people in the New York barista community are kind of
Barista.
barista.
Okay.
Barista community. Our
Say that one more time.
postal stamp storage are trying to are kind of peeved about almond milk because it takes a lot of water to make each almond. So maybe all the water is being diverted from places where and maybe water tanks is where you hold postage stamps so they stay sticky. So all the water going to the almonds is going to make it the water tanks more expensive.
Or maybe because there's so much water going to that, it makes it difficult for people to stick.
So-
No,
but then-
this totally went off the rails. No, I will absolutely tell you that is totally incorrect.
Sure.
Yes, but I was like, I give you points for guessing.
Okay.
Where this actually starts is with a recent news event. Okay, so a few weeks ago, FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb said in a meeting, quote, "An almond doesn't lactate." And that set off...
Fact check, true.
True. That set off a frenzy, okay? And that was because a lot of people thought there might be new regulations. And this all revolves around the definition of milk.
Okay.
What is milk?
Right.
Is almond milk? Is that milk? Is coconut milk milk? Is soy milk? And so this seems to suggest that there might actually be some regulations around what the definition of milk actually is.
Around using the word milk.
Right. So some definitions.
Oh, this doesn't say milk.
Yeah. This says it just says almond.
Interesting.
And so that's where it is very controversial.
Oh, but the bottom says almond milk, but it's one word. It just says almond milk.
Almond milk. And so that's where if they were to take away almond milk, or what would it become? It'd be like almond juice. Oat juice, it just doesn't sound quite as appealing. No. And so that would be a huge win for the dairy industry. Because a lot of dairy companies and lobbyists claim that these alternatives are taking away money from the dairy industry. Okay. So what are some of the numbers here, Professor?
There's a bit of a kind of crisis sweeping America's milk industry at the moment. The average American, they've reduced their intake of milk quite significantly. It used to be 30 gallons a year in the 1970s, and today it's just around about 18 gallons per person per year. And so what this has led to is a glut of milk, and farmers have been chucking the stuff away, literally pouring it away, chucking it into slurry pits and the rest of it. And so you've seen this glut of milk, and at the same time, part of the problem for them is that non-dairy milk sales, these almond milks and all the other types, they're going up quite significantly. In fact, they've increased 61% since 2012. It's estimated that this business is now worth around about $2.1 billion a year.
Right, so that's become pretty big business, and right now a lot of dairy farmers are faced with this glut of milk. So while there's been this fixation on almond milk and soy milk, that's not the whole reason for why we're seeing this glut. There's other reasons. One is that, better genetics means that cows have been producing more. We actually have a chart here. You can see the amount of milk produced per cow. Look how much. That's like insane.
That can't be good.
Well, I mean, they're more productive cows. I mean, that maybe is better. And then also consolidation in the dairy industry has actually driven down costs. So that's created more efficient farms, and that's bolstered output. And then specifically now we're seeing a glut of milk because it's summertime and schools are closed, and that's where a lot of
milk goes to those cartons.
They do, and like school consumption is a huge.
Milk has to be, and I don't want to diss milk too much before we get further into this, but milk has to be one of the few foods that is most often drank because there's a command to drink it. It's like, drink your milk, It's not. No one likes, I mean, this is why adults don't drink milk, because my mom's not there when I'm having dinner saying, hey, have some milk with that chicken parmesan. That goes together.
That's a very millennial view that you have. I will say personally, I love milk. I drink chocolate milk all the time. That is one of my favorite drinks. Much better than beer or alcohol.
Or the shoddy vodka from last week.
Yeah, or any of that gross stuff. And so this has been kind of a trend. I mean, what you're saying is part of this larger trend where Americans are just drinking less milk. And also, we have all these diet fads and other things going into that. And guess what happens, though? We have all this milk, this glut of milk. Where does it go? It goes into cheese.
Oh, okay.
So to be able to store a lot of this unused milk, some farmers pour it out. That is part of it. There have been in the past reports of euthanized cows because there were, too many. But
I mean, they murdered them anyway.
Yeah, okay. But the vast majority.
Euthanize is actually like an extremely kind word. Like you make it sound like there's like some cow hospice. They just okay, we'll have to pull the plug on old Bess.
Okay, yeah, that was maybe a little bit too generous.
All right.
But yeah, so a lot of this is going into cheese. And actually, Professor, what do we have going on in the cheese market?
The largest stockpile of cheese in at least 100 years since regulators began keeping tabs on piles of cheese. And I mean, there's basically a 1.4 billion pound stockpile. It equates to around about 900,000 cubic yards of cheese. And if you want to work out what that looks like, it's about the same size as the US Capitol building in Washington.
No.
Yeah, so we got a lot of cheese on our hands.
No.
We have a lot of cheese, and we don't know what to do with it. And actually, federal buy-ups are a common practice. Some call this quantitative cheesing.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, you've heard of this?
No.
Okay. It's a wonderful name. So the last round.
So is this why when the government sends you government cheese in that box with
we will get into that.
Oh, we're gonna get there? Oh, good.
There. Government cheese is coming up. So basically the federal government buys up cheese. The last time this happened was in 2016. The USDA bought $20 million worth of surplus cheese to help aid dairy farmers.
What are they? And we're gonna find out what they did with it.
Well, they gave it away to states that needed it, or to people that needed it, to food banks and other things. And actually, Professor, this has happened before.
Yes, it has indeed. Ronald Reagan might be everyone's favourite capitalist, but this is the man who also socialised cheese. There was a massive glut back in the 1980s, and to bail out the farmers, Ronald Reagan instituted the government cheese program, buying cheese from farmers and then distributing it to people who were in need. And so this was a great big stockpile worth millions, even billions, and it was kept safe deep inside various places, including caves in Missouri, amongst others.
Isn't Reagan the one who said the scariest thing you could hear is if someone came to your door and said, with the government and I have cheese?
Something like that. I think
something like that, right?
That's a rough quote.
Yeah.
I think something along those lines.
Paraphrasing here.
Yeah. Okay, so this is not the only way, though, that the government supports the dairy industry and supports the cheese market. There are other ways, and this is where we're going to take a little detour.
Great.
And this is where Exhibit A comes in.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott. Today he is actually a pizza delivery.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's a good line on the resume.
Yeah, we have beautiful Domino's pizza. If you want to
handmade
if you want to open that up, doesn't that look delicious?
Oh my God, Justine. Trigger warning.
Yeah. We'll keep it close for now.
Oh God, I want everyone to see this. Just look how these pieces cling together.
Wait.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Well, okay, to fairness to Domino's, I bought this yesterday. We're taping this at 10 in the morning.
But why is it warm? It's warm.
We reheated it.
Why?
Because I wanted it to be warm for the show.
Why? They can't sense temperatures.
Well, you can. It makes it more real. Anyway, so we have this beautiful Domino's pizza. And so basically, with the aid of the USDA, the dairy industry created dairy management, which has been dubbed the Illuminati of cheese. Okay, so what they do for the past decade, this group has been pulling the strings behind many of the fast food hits that we know and love.
Really?
So the quesalupa from Taco Bell, which basically has crust or a taco shell that has cheese inserted into it. That was made.
Why do you say it in such a disgusting way, though? It's a cheese taco, right? What do you mean inserted into it?
It's the first shell stuffed with melted pepper jack cheese.
Okay.
I mean, you think about the Pizza Hut crust that has cheese inserted into it. You have all these things where it's like dairy management works with a lot of these fast food companies to find ways to insert more cheese into their products.
I mean, call me old-fashioned, but like, why not just make less cheese? Why have the government buy cheese? Why insert cheese into weird places? Like, why not just make less of it?
Well, this is something that the whole support of the dairy industry dates back to the Great Depression, where it was sort of a national
we have
effort.
an obesity crisis and we're putting cheese into everything?
And so that's actually a very interesting point because they came under fire for supporting dairy management, the USDA did, but at the same time trying to reduce the obesity epidemic. And so for Domino's specifically, dairy management helped revive Domino's sales by partnering with them to develop a new line of pizzas with 40% more cheese. Now, this pizza we have right here, this beautiful pizza.
Please, close that.
It has, I put every option. There are probably like 2 or 3 options to add extra cheese. We selected every single one. So this is possibly the cheesiest pizza we could have gotten. And guess what? They also dairy management proceeded to work on a $12 million marketing campaign with Domino's. For the quesalupa, dairy management has a food scientist that they embedded at Taco Bell to help them develop and add more cheese to their products. So this is like all within the industry. It's pretty crazy. But, okay, getting back to the matter at hand. So despite dairy management's efforts, we still have this gigantic cheese surplus. Do you want to try another guess as to how this relates to your postage stamps?
Okay, postage stamp storage. Hey, you know what? Postage stamps happen to be made by the government. They're fiat currency. That's why I put gold on all my mail instead of stamps. But maybe the same place that the government stores stamps, they're trying to keep some of all that excess cheese, and so there's government stockhouses are storing cheese instead of stamps, and so it costs more to store stamps because they're having to send them out to the Fort Knox of stamps, which is more expensive.
There is a Fort Knox of stamps.
Really?
Which we will get to. I like where you're going with this. Okay, so all that excess cheese, not stored by the government. It used to be stored by the government in many cases.
Is it like that uranium bunker they have in Arizona?
But back in the 1980s, they did have cheese storages. Now it's not. It's mostly done by private companies, but it does have to be stored somewhere. So you were on the right track. And the largest storage facilities for cheese are in caves in Missouri. So this is something that the professor alluded to, except the government was storing cheese there. Now it's private companies. And Professor, what do we have going on in these caves in Missouri?
Well, Kraft have stuffed, I think it's Springfield, Missouri, full of their cheeses, all their various types. They keep them in there. And these kind of enormous, vast emporiums with these great big containers of cheese. It's quite a frightening place. But the reason why they do it is because obviously, and not just cheese, but other materials as well, you've got a much more standardized temperature between summer and winter, day and night. And so it's a great place to store things, particularly cheese, which needs a fairly constant, fairly low temperature. So there is this place 100 feet down, around about 58 degrees Fahrenheit. They can cool it a little bit lower. They pile all their cheese into it.
Yeah. And so basically there is this massive network of caves. It's not the caves that were formed by stalactites and stalagmites and water. These are fairly regulated humidity caves that were formed. They were old limestone mines. that became this
Okay.
network of caves. And there's
Does that mean there are cheese spelunkers who are
going
exploring the
around
cave, trying to find some cheddar down here?
cheddar. Well, there's actually, I mean, there is a lot of cheese that's being kept down there, and a lot of companies use this. There's a place called Subtropolis, which is actually basically a little mini underground city with 1,600 workers. And dozens of businesses that are down there. Some of the businesses include Light Edge Solutions, which is a cloud computing company. So they're keeping servers underground as a way to keep them cool.
Okay.
There's also a lot of the National Archives is down in these caves in Missouri.
Wow.
And it's thought that the original film reels to Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz are down there.
You realize in my head, like, everything is made of cheese. Like, it's like the Library of Congress,
cows.
but every book is made of cheese. And, like,
And all the caverns of cheese and everything.
yeah.
Okay.
You know, I tried to, I don't want to feel like people might get the wrong idea. I tried to intern at Murray's Cheese Cave in New York when I was a freshman in college.
Oh, really?
They
But
never got
this
back
is
to
a
me.
different type of
Oh.
cheese-aged cave.
Well, they're probably trying not to age at these caves, right?
Yes, they're not. This is not to impart a certain flavor. So a lot of caves people do put cheese in caves to age them. This is not for that effect. And guess what else is down in these caves? So the U.S. Postal Service keeps hundreds of millions of postage stamps as an underground
Why don't they just
distribution
make
hub.
the right number? Why make them and store them? What
Because
the heck?
Some of these are like really valuable.
No, they're not. They're
postage
stamps. I mean, sorry to
Well, I
all
mean-
the Falagan, or what's the word for a stamp collector? Anyone? know?
Philatelist.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, of course.
Professor,
Of
yeah.
course, the professor knew. Well, actually, Professor, as long as you're here, can you tell us what's been going on with stamp storage?
So since 1982, the United States Postal Service Stamp Fulfillment Center has stored pretty much the whole country's entire stamp needs, not collection, but needs in these caves. But they also fulfill postage orders there as well. So they're filled there. About 400 to 600 millions worth of stamps are stored in the facility at any one time, and there's a lot of processing goes on of parcels, etc. through here as well.
Yeah, so this is what we were talking about. This is the Fort Knox of stamps. There is actually heightened security here to keep the stamps safeguarded, and this is where some of the nation's most valuable stamps are kept.
So, I'm sorry. Hold on. When you say nation's most valuable stamps, what are the nation's most valuable stamps?
Oh, well, that's a very good question. There's a lot of different antique stamps, limited issue stamps. There's all sorts of things that were limited run that become more valuable.
And so this isn't the government storing this.
It's the U.S. Postal Service. And, the National Archives is
So they just have a really big stamp collection? Do they sell these stamps to the
Yes,
public?
they sell them to the public.
To the philatelists?
Yes, and I mean from all over the world. And the National Archives is down here, just as a little side note. And so what they did was they actually have JFK's gurney and medical supplies. So everything that happened after he was shot is all kept down in these caves.
Yeah.
There are a lot of interesting things going on in these caves, but as these caves become more popular, so right now it costs about, in some of these caves in Subtropolis, it costs about $2.25 per square foot for an entire year of rental. And so that's pretty cheap. That's about half the price it costs on land. And so as these caves become more popular for storage, especially as we have this glut of cheese, prices are likely to rise, and that will likely impact all these postage stamps.
So the government basically is paying these. I'm still trying to get over the phrase JFK's gurney, by the way. But so the government is paying this company, Subtropolis, or subcontractors for the storage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there non-government storage? Is there non-government storage, or do they kind of?
There's a lot of non-government storage.
okay,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so like Kraft Cheese keeps their cheeses in these caves.
see.
So there's a lot of private. There's auto parts dealers and all sorts of things that are done under these caves. It's actually a really amazing, burgeoning economy that's going on. Because a lot of these caves have been, mined out and they weren't being used, and so this is sort of a new.
Last time you did under the sea, and now we're underground.
Yeah, I think I just like going deep. That's
Very good.
Yeah.
Now this cheese, by the way, I didn't ask this. Oh, so we've arrived,
now
right?
we have arrived at the knock-on effect.
Because it's gone from more of this, more milk around, more So the milk is made into cheese to store it, more cheese storage, and that edges out the postal storage. It makes it more expensive. What kind of cheese? Like, what kind of cheese are we talking down here? I mean, is there anything I'd want to eat?
So a lot of the reason for this glut is believed. It's not confirmed, but it's believed that it's mozzarella. So it's not necessarily Swiss cheese and American cheese that have been causing the glut, but specifically mozzarella. And so people are hopeful that as summer pizza sales increase, so maybe more pizza people buying these.
I don't think so.
Domino's pizzas.
I hope not.
40% more cheese might actually help ease some of the issue. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, cool stuff.
Yeah. And now I don't want to talk about the thing we talk about every time. You know what I'm going to say here.
What?
Trade does play into this, right? Isn't this
Yes.
part of the cheese glut as well?
Yeah, actually it does. And that's been a huge concern for dairy farmers, specifically trade with China and trade with Mexico. And so that's been another reason that we're seeing the surplus as well.
Roger, what are you guys doing? Why doesn't the UK just import all of this excess cheese we have?
Has the same thing. The EU was very famous for its butter mountain for the last 20 years. It finally pretty much disappeared at the end of 2017, but exactly the same thing is that you had too much production and the government, the EU, bought it up. There were wine lakes, there were butter mountains, there were milk lakes. So I think it's a common problem for any market that's trying to find an equilibrium.
Yeah, and in terms of takeaways, this is sort of, this market has really been created because of these government subsidies and a lot of government support.
Speaking of takeaways, can we get this off the table, please? No, but and what's interesting to me, just zooming out, it strikes me that, milk is something, it's a classic food. It's like, when we didn't have that much food in the US, it was like, all right, milk, it's what you have. And now that we have other and better options, this is definitely better. It's so much easier on your stomach. It tastes better. It's better in every way. Somehow, for some reason, the government isn't letting the free market do its thing. And so we're like, no, we have to keep the same amount of cow production, even though we don't need these cows. There's also a meat surplus we have at the same time. So we somehow insist, even though Americans are actually trying to make healthier choices, the government, by trying to keep the old industries afloat exactly as they are, is like forcing bad choices down our throats so that everything you eat secretly has cheese in it, because that's how we have to eat, because that's how Americans ate 50 years ago.
Right, and it's actually interesting to look at what Canada does. So actually Donald Trump went after Canada for tariffs and protectionist measures on their dairy industry, but they actually have an interesting system where they balance milk supply and consumer demand through production quotas. And so they're not actually overproducing milk, and they also limit the amount of milk that can be imported. And so it's interesting looking at different countries and how they're supporting their dairy farmers, but also not producing way too much.
Yeah, I'll just leave you with this. I'm just happening to read on this box, it says, a marvel of modern inefficiency, because they're touting how slow they make it. But a marvel of modern inefficiency is a perfect way to describe this terrible pizza.
And on that note, we'll leave it at that.
Yes, but before we go, it's time for our next segment, our new segment. We have another new segment called Is That a Thing?, where we look at things and figure out if they're things. And to join us for this,
Very apt description.
I think so, is Ash Bennington, another member of our great editorial team here. Ash, how are you?
Hey guys, good to see you.
So you recently took a couple months and did a really interesting investigation into corporate blockchain.
Yeah.
And there's a great 30-minute piece, by the way, everyone should check out. That was published on Real Vision Wednesday. But just tell us, is this a thing? Is it true that the real innovation is blockchain and people can really do cool things with that, or what did you find out?
Well, it's very early in the game, but if the index is money being poured into the space, it certainly seems like a thing. And the technology does enable people to do really cool, novel, innovative stuff.
But what exactly is corporate blockchain?
That's the $64,000 question.
Oh, no.
So basically what it is it's a distributed database that allows for users throughout the system to secure the system throughout the network. And what that means is no longer is there a single person or entity in charge of the data. It's distributed throughout the network, and the trust is built into the network itself.
Are the benefits of this going to trickle down to the little people, or is this just going to be gained by the big corporations?
That's a great question, Roger. If you ask some of the big incumbents in the space, they say that it's going to add efficiencies to the big players. But what we've seen is there is just an incredible proliferation of small companies who are doing really innovative stuff in this space. So I think that one thing that seems relatively certain is if that large incumbent businesses do benefit, it's not going to be beneficial to their employees. It's going to be cost savings, and it's going to be retrenchments.
That's very interesting.
Cool.
Speaking of cost savings, before you go, thank you very much, Ash. That was very interesting. And
Thanks
I think
for
we
having
found out that it's That's a thing?
It is a thing.
But before we go, yes, we have an important reminder. Here's your microphone. We have a special deal on Real Vision's premium research product, Macro Insiders, and it ends very soon.
Macro Insiders is co-written by Raoul Pal, who's the Real Vision co-founder, as well as Julian Brigden. And Macro Insiders brings you, oh my gosh, all the profitable opportunities in global macro investing.
And to learn more, you can simply go to realvision.com/macroinsiders2018.
And if you're interested, if you act now, you can secure your 25% discount. So go check it out.
Yes, Ash?
I don't remember.
realvision.com/macroinsiders2018, the current year. So that does it for this week's show. We're taking 2 weeks off for the video. However, we are going to have fresh podcasts at the podcast app under Real Vision Presents, and we'll kind of do interviews and dig more specifically into the knock-on effects of current things happening in markets, kind of a summer interview series, if you will.
You want to check that out, and we'll see you guys back in a few weeks. Bye-bye.
Right?
Let's check out this pizza.
Let's not.